Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. As it was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without amen. Now, what does that mean? It means, as it was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without amen. It means there is no linear time, you know? It means it's all like that. From the Big Bang, the Alpha to the Omega, here we are. Hello, AI. Good to see you. And welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. I am your griot, your Sensei Al Bob. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome aboard to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. And, you know, it's just same as it ever was. This little pandemic, this little scandemic. Yeah, I'm sure. It's what is a virus anyway? A virus, can you catch it if someone sneezes on you? Well, I'm not a virologist, so I'm not an expert, so I'm not telling you. But from my little research, a virus is a RNA strand. It's a chemical. It's scrummid bubbles, Our biologic system, our immune system, goes after anything that's not supposed to be in our body that is alive. So if a virus, not a virus, but a bug, a germ, gets into us, now that can be sneezed on you. Your immune system goes after it, right? And depending on how serious it is, meaning when you get sick, when you, get in, an infection, that is your body, going after that bug, right? And it raises your temperature, so it makes it so that bug can't live inside you. It sets up an immune response, and so it goes after it, right? Whenever it's kind of when you're, hay fever, those are immune responses. Whenever you get bit by a mosquito or something a little more dangerous, those are immune responses. But when you get a toxin inside of you, you eat crappy food, you live in an environment that's surrounded by chemicals. The folks who live in China, their air is what our air used to be in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. And then, the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, all of those environmental acts were brought to you not by any Democrat, but by Richard frigging Nixon. This week, I think it was Tuesday, was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And I heard some senator take, credit for, I did Earth Day. A lot of people did Earth Day. And there was a number of people. There was one person who I knew very well, Sam Lovejoy. And he's a guy who, buried the cars in Harvard Square. He's the guy who cut the cables to the, data tower at the site of Vermont Yankee, right? So he took that around, before they built, I don't know if they still do it, they probably don't care. But back in the day when the AEC or the NRC, those guys actually believed in nuclear power, so they wanted to do it right. So they would put up a instrument tower and measure the wind and all of that. So if there was ever an accident, they knew which way the wind was going to blow, right? They knew, where to put the evacuation horns, and they would have an evacuation plan, right? But as the Price-Anderson Act took over, which guaranteed the utility company and its investors $16 for every $1 they spent, and it didn't have to be their dollars. Hey, uh, anyway, so basically, they, if their cost overruns, fine, because it came out of the ratepayer's pocket, and they made $16 on it. So they didn't care. So let the mob build the thing. Let the worst contractor build it. As long as they can waste money. That's our nuclear power plant. We could have had thorium nuclear power, right? And where nuclear power, the reactors we have are based on uranium, and where we had to dig that up, and then you have to turn it into fuel. Very expensive, right? Again, Price-Anderson Act. For every dollar they spend, they make $16. And if there's an accident, they're not held responsible. Just like the guys who make so the National Health Service, those guys and their ancillaries do all the research. Your tax money goes for all the research, right? And affects you and is part of this pandemic. This what happened in 1918 changed the country. When you go back and look at what happened in 1876 when they passed H.R. 1876, which was the bill that made the District of Columbia. And what did that bill do? It basically took a Sharpie to the Constitution and where it says we the people to form a more perfect union, to protect and to establish security and da 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 da, right? And the First Amendment, no law will be made that you need to do what we tell you. No law will keep you from talking freely. No law will be made that you can't get together with your friends and talk about stuff, right? Well, all of that went away in 1876, And why did we fight the Civil War? We fought the Civil War not for slavery, but to decide who was going to rule, whether we were going to be an industrial ruled society, ruled by fiat of a plutocratic state, or we were going to be an agrarian society where everyone kind of grew their own food. Did you know that when Henry Ford built his first Model T, it was designed to put alcohol? That motor of the internal combustion engine wasn't designed to run on gasoline. It was designed to run on alcohol, and that you could grow virtually anything could be turned into alcohol. Grass, shrubs, your rose bushes, anything. You chop it up, you distill it, the sugars in it make alcohol, right? And Mr. Rockefeller said no, because he was making money from, they were going after, people were lighting their houses with oil lamps, right? And that oil first came from Wales, and then they realized, you can get this black stuff that comes out of the ground in Pennsylvania. You can distill that into lamp oil. Well, a few more steps, and you can distill it into other things, right? And our whole friggin' society is based on distilling that black stuff. But now, because our industry has, and it's not doing anything around the world. And it happened, right here on good old Earth Day. Right now, the last month, March, right, and April have been the cleanest on the planet. China, those people, they used to have to wear those masks, so they wouldn't choke to death from the biphenyl and asbestos and other toxic materials. When I was a kid living in Harlem, they used Con Edison used to burn coal and bunker oil. Bunker is like the gloppiest oil there is, and they had a plant on 16th Street in the East Side, on the East River, and they had one in Harlem, and they had one in Queens, and they had a couple more, but those were the ones I kind of lived near, and especially the one that was off of the Harlem River. We used to go swimming in the winter, summer, and jump in the water, and that was like just blacker than it was like oil. And I remember climbing out of after jumping off the dock into the water, and there'd be, and I came up, and my friends were laughing at me because I was the widest of the kids. And after I came out of that, I kind of jumped into a little floating bunker oil thing that was in the river, and I came out blacker than black, blacker than that curtain there. And they all laughed at me, hey, you're a black guy, and when they were burning that stuff, they had no scrubbers on those towers, and they didn't even have them tall. And so the black smog would come over, and, you knew which days not to hang your clothes outside because they'd be, Anyway, that's where China was until this happened, and everyone stopped working, and then they stopped burning coal and oil, and now oil is less. It was negative $18, meaning it costs them more money to store it than it does soon they're going to start paying people at the pump to pump it into their cars, right? Wow. So things are strange, but they've always been strange, right? And it's just that people have been so focused on themselves, moment to moment. Oh, what am I going to do? Am I going to take care of this? Oh, no. Are they thinking about their neighbors? Are they thinking about the planet? Are they thinking about, the air, the water? What's it going to be for their children? If you have children, you should be out in the street outraged, because, look at me. I'm an old guy, I don't care. I've already died 6 times, and I know it's not a big deal. Dying is not, dying is one thing you can depend on. Everyone's gonna die, so don't worry about that, And, right now, there are people, who are like, Anthony, Dr. Anthony, little Anthony, he owns a part of an entity that owns the genetic model of this, nouveau riche 19. He owns it. So whatever he's talking, everyone's got to get the inoculation. Well, if everyone's going to get it, that's a lot of bucks in his pocket. And the same with, micro penis Billy Boy. He's going on and on about, the world can only be safe if everyone's inoculated. Well, he not only owns that with Anthony, but he also owns the vehicle that will make sure, they want to open up these states, right? Georgia, right? Well, Georgia hasn't done any kind of real testing, so they don't know who's got what, right? Your connection is unstable. Please wait while we try to reconnect. So, go watch Max Igon at Crow House. Excellent, right? And, Richie from Boston. That he's like driving all over America. What's going on, right? And Jimmy Dore, a 2-bit comedian doing a YouTube show from his mother's basement. And he's doing better news reporting than CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CBS, NBC, ABC, and public broadcasting put together. I can't stand listening to public radio anymore because all they talk about is useless crap. Even when they're trying to talk about a movie or a book or whatever. It's crap. They're not even looking at what's really going on. They're just telling the party line, and everyone's so scared. But if you had kids, if you have children, you should be on the internet researching this, seeing what's going on, because any child that was born after 2000 gets 78 before they're 10. And so, who did you know that the base of most vaccines are, infant feces, dead monkey brains, cow udder extract. I have no idea. But if you were to go look at the stuff that these vaccines are made on, you would be like, ah. And your children whose immune system hasn't even, been, mine's already, forget about it. It's going to do what it's going to do. But if you were born between the time you're born and you are 7, you get 78. You know. So if you have children, and that's really that their life is like being turned into a horror show, chemical experimentation. There's zombie children. They're plowing. The two major food sources in America, Florida and California, and they're plowing all that food under the ground because the FDA and the farm guys are saying, listen, farmers, no one's going to buy that food. So if you try and sell it, you'll get no money from us. So pour all the milk out, plow all the vegetables into the ground. So, when September rolls around, or even earlier, there's going to be no food in the frigging planet, and that you're going to have to eat the crap that they give you, and it's going to be soy green. It's going to turn you into a zombie. It's going to, you'll be eating this. Well, this, they say it's from soybeans, but oh boy, this tastes like meat. Well, it is. It's grandma's liver. And what do they call it when you start eating other human beings? That's what it's going to physically. It's you're going to be turned into. You ever watch those 1990s? Zombie slash. Who's the guys who live forever and drink blood? I'm already a zombie. No, you're not, buddy. You're not a zombie. You're Buddy. Buddy Blindly. He's like, no one else is like Buddy, right? So he's not a zombie, He may sometimes look like a zombie when he stays up late. Like, what is it now? It's 9:00 here. So what is it there? It's like 2 or 3 in the morning, right? So anyway, but gang, this is nothing new. This has been going on since Mesopotamia. They've been messing with people because, our history is not really told to us, the technologies, just me in my little lowly position as a itinerant scholar, I've seen enough stuff to say, things aren't what they seem to be. 13 p.m. Okay. Oh, in the afternoon. See, the world is spinning around. When I went to Australia in 1977 with my first wife, lovely Donna Ann, and we were on the crappiest airplane ride, flight 007, coming from LA, and we were in steerage in the back of the plane. And I went to use John. My sweetie was asleep. And they gave us nothing. No meal, no nothing, no even nuts, nothing. Right? No drinks, nothing. And luckily, I knew enough to bring something with us. And so I go into John and I do my business and I hit the little button and the blue swirl starts going clockwise. And for some reason I keep my thumb on a button and it slows down and it goes the other way, meaning as the plane was flying over it, we flew over from the northern hemisphere into the southern hemisphere. And when that happened, I had this vision, and I looked in the mirror and I could see through the mirror into time, right? I saw it was like flipping cards, right? And I saw, wars, and I saw assassinations, I saw economic collapses. And these were things that happened in the 80s, not like in the near future, no. And then I saw 9/11, and I saw a lot of things. Just like when I was in Ireland and the old crone told me about things about my life. And then weeks after I left her, I was in Dublin and I went to this little alley and found this tea house where this woman again read my tea leaves and told me things about my life. And and both of them said, especially the old crone told me that I was going to have a difficult life, a very interesting life. And she chuckled. She goes, "No, that's a Chinese curse to me. You have an interesting life." And the thing is that I've done a tremendous amount of things, but it's not that I didn't stick to them, meaning I did them until I became very good at them. And I kind of got a little bored. And then a door opened and I went to the next, instead of going, "Oh, I can't go through that door," I went through that door, and I worked as a artist, and I was relatively successful at that. But I saw my friends who really were greatly successful and they were miserable, right? They were always worrying about the next show and the this and the that. And I did art because I liked doing art, right? And I didn't want to lose that, right? And I, got involved with Adbusters and we did social conscious art, and that was really fun, right? And again, we did that until I saw that my friends who were doing that were co-opted. They were brought into, nonprofit, things, foundations and stuff like that, and paid really good and da 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 da, and then they stopped being interesting. I never wanted to stop being interesting, and that allowed me to go into different places, meet different people, have different experiences. I showed the pictures of me living with the Aboriginal folk. I would have never done that if I had stayed stuck there. I would have never met Donna Ann, right? We would have never traveled the world unless I said, "Hey, let's go travel the world," because I had this sweetie who was brilliant, smart, and she kind of needed her horizons exposed, and she needed somebody like me to tell her how great she was, because a lot of people were just jealous of her and never gave her. The only person who really supported her was her dad, and he was a guy who was brilliant, but because he didn't finish high school because of the Korean War, he got Anyway, that's life. You live life and then it's over, right? So this is a great opportunity, not one to be squandered, right? We can really, because the powers that shouldn't be, the hidden hand, the high table, they are all hanging by their fingernails. They wouldn't be doing this because it's against the, if you read, Agenda 21 or, a quiet weapons for a soft war or something like that. If you read all these think tank papers, which the people I work for today, look at this thing that came over my, give it a read and give me bullet points on it, and that was like in the 80s, 90s. I saw this stuff coming. When I was at Cornell, I saw a lot of things that were like, say what, and my boss once sent me. In Cornell was, you go to any national laboratory in America, and there's a Cornell Avenue or Cornell Boulevard or Cornell Road, because Cornell was instrumental, along with like Chicago, those two schools and Stanford, those three schools made the atomic bomb. That was the Manhattan Project. All the mines came from those and other places, but those were the three. And Cornell had the money too, and had its own, its own atom smasher underneath the football field. And so it was a, Hail Hydra, DARPA place since like the 20s. They were involved in the Philadelphia experiment. They were involved in the Montauk Project. They were involved. I mean, Brookhaven National Laboratory was there before Manhattan Project because it was there to help facilitate Nikola Tesla's work on Wardenclyffe. And they had turned the whole eastern end of Long Island. That's where the RCA labs were. That's where all the crazy stuff that you could buy on Radio Row, which was right where the world, when I was a teenager, before they built the World Trade Centers, that 410 block area in Lower Manhattan on the east side was what they call Radio Row. And that was all this stuff that came from World War I, World War II, Korea, and starting to be Vietnam, and the Cold War, and all that stuff. And you'd be in there, in the, shelves of all this craziness. And there'd be people there like from, Saudi Arabia and Israel looking for this stuff. Or, things have always been weird, right? Now, I'm really blessed to be out in the middle of here nowhere, JC, cool glasses, Al Bob. Well, it's the only way I can read the things. Buddy is sweet and nice to put it in caps, so I only need one. But to see the smaller stuff, I got to go this. So, JC. JC, is that you, lucky guy, you? Is that who I'm seeing here? The man who escaped California? Is that you? I think it's you. Anyway, so you shouldn't be scared. But if you have kids, man, you better be watching out for them, and don't just go along to get along, I haven't gotten my check yet. Have you gotten your check yet? I haven't gotten mine. And I could use it, man. I'm living on, $481 a month. Could you guys live on who there? John Birmingham. Could you live on $481 a month, right? And that's because I own nothing. I have nothing. And when you have nothing, you got nothing to lose, right? But you guys who got kids, families, you got a lot to lose, All the people who I love are pretty much dead, My parents are dead. My grandma's dead. All my elder, Grandpa Stoll, Madam Olga Kluver, Billy Kluver, Grandpa Stoll, Mike Stoll, a whole bunch of others, right? And girlfriends. The 80s were not kind to a lot of people, It was sad to see, I saw a lot of death. I mean, right in front of me. Now, I didn't even have to go to a war zone to see a lot of death. On the Lower East Side, I saw a lot of death. Drug addictions. Around here, this, OxyContin has wiped out generations here, and half the states, especially the red states, did not take the Medicare expansion. So any state that doesn't have Medicaid expansion doesn't have, the only people who get health care are rich folk. And the Koch brothers, you should go read a book called Kochland, right? Go investigate the Koch brothers, Koch family, and all the other whack job zillionaires that basically think poor people should just die. I mean, there should be no taxes. Poor people should not be taxed, Education, get rid of, Betsy DeVos, she comes from one of these whack job families, and she's doing a really great job of getting rid of public education, which wasn't worth much to begin with, but now, and like in Virginia is probably the most racist state in the Union. Way more than Mississippi, way more than Alabama. Because when The Supreme Court said that, public schools need to be integrated. You know what Virginia did? Virginia, for 10 years, said, okay, we're not going to have public schools, period. So they closed up shop. All the public schools across Virginia closed. And then the rich people bought up the nice public schools for a nickel because they had buddies who were on the inside who were the city county managers, and they bought those properties for nothing. Just like, when you redline a neighborhood and then you gentrify it, and then 10 years later, that's where all the rich people are living, right? So let's see. Not in New Zealand. We are among the most expensive place in the world to live. All those billionaires building bunkers and pushing up the real estate costs. Yes, that's called gentrification, meaning the folks who lived there before the guys bought that stuff, they're the ones who are getting thrown off their properties, right? Can we eat the rich yet? Would you really want to? I mean, they're really, it's like Homer Simpson, right? His boss, Mr. Smithers. No, that's the guy who's in love with, the rich guy. The rich guy who owns a nuclear power. You wouldn't want to eat that guy? I don't think so. Just, unlike not eating much, what's really tasty, what I have a ton of out there in the deep green, is dandelion. And dandelion, once, the little flower comes up and blooms, these leaves come up. And those dandelion leaves are like lettuce. And it's, still cold here, so it hasn't gone nuts. But it's the other day, and I saw this happen twice. Back in March, it was like really, really ridiculously cold. And then it got warm. And there was this one day when we had storms and the weather didn't know what to do, whether it was going to be winter or spring, whether it didn't know what to do. And then it became spring, right? But it was still kind of cold because I'm at 4,500 feet up in the air. I'm up in the mountains. I go down the valleys, everything's leafed out, but not so much up here. But all the dandelions about a week and a half ago, just before Earth Day. Earth Day, I guess, was Tuesday. So like Sunday, a week ago. The little dandelions were popping up. And the other day, we had a big storm where the trees were blowing. They looked like they were all going to blow down, but they just bent. And then the wind was going, from south to north to east to west. The trees were just doing this. And it was like waking them up. And so that was 2 days ago. And today, they went from having little leaves to big leaves, not totally leafed out, but up to like 70%. And all those dandelions have puffed out. And now, and there's all around me in the woods, there's thousands of these dandelion plants that are now coming up with big leaves. And last summer, when I was living here, I just went around with my little basket and a pair of scissors and clipped them and put the leaves in the basket and kind of washed them off a little bit with my garden hose and in my basket. And then I would chop them up and because I have no teeth, so I had to make them small and nice and vinaigrette. And I pretty much lived on that. And the other thing that's growing out here are mushrooms. And so, and the folks who are poor, they come through the woods and pick the mushrooms and then sell them at, or used to anyway, farmers markets of the bourgeois people in Johnson City. And what was nice last year is that as they kind of, went through, they didn't pick it dry. So the fungi would come back within a week or two. And the other thing that was really nice, when they would come around me, they would pick it, but they would leave a bag, a nice paper, grocery bag full of mushrooms. So I didn't have to pick them. Yes, they picked my mushrooms and they kept 60%, but they left me a nice big, it's just me. I didn't need the whole forest. So it was. And that's how we have to treat each other. That's how we have to get along. Dandelion is good for your liver. I was reading that today. Yep. And it's, like I said, with a nice vinaigrette, very tasty. And when there is nothing in the supermarkets, except this dreck, Soylent Green. Soylent Green, it's people, and then you start turning into a vampire and wanting to, throw your kids on the barbecue. And this has happened before, gang. This is nothing new, right? And it's a scam, It's always a scam. The Greeks said, follow the money, see who this benefits, And like we had in the 3 counties here, we had a bad flu. This, October, November, September, December. So back in Thanksgiving, one of those counties closed their school. Kids went home for Thanksgiving for long weekend. And the school decided not to open it up. Well, it hasn't been opened up since then, right? And it was bad, but, we had no real health care. So the best they could do is just keep everyone home. And pretty much nobody died. Everyone got pretty sick. Me, not so much, because I was, out here. I don't see anybody. Plus, I ate my vegetables and took a lot of vitamin C and B and garlic and a few other supplements. So you don't, and I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do anything, except read books and talk to you guys, and kind of that's it. Yep, not the vampires. Yep. Yep, on the scrooms. So, that's life. It's 9:30 here, and it's a half an hour, and there's 4 of you there, and 3 thumbs up. It's all gravy, right? So, thing is, this is an opportunity. Go check out. I mean, you guys I have an amazing stream. People are sending me tons of links, and I get to see a lot of good stuff. And I'm pretty good at, I don't watch the 2-hour long thing. I kind of click onto it, look at it, and I can put my little cursor on the line and just kind of go through it, and I can see in, the little box, and basically it's watching the video using the what was that lady's name? Elaine. There was a speed reading thing I took when I was with the Maryknoll priests. They were itinerant scholars. They worked for everybody. They worked for the church, but the church hooked them up to do all these studies. And the one guy, so after that nun broke my jaw and my orbit, my cardinal godfather found these guys in Long Island, Garden City. I think it was Garden City. Islip, somewhere around there. Garden City. I think it was Garden City. And they had, they didn't have a church per se, but they had a place, and it was, not so much a school where they taught kids, but they did research, right? And young scholars from other Catholic universities would come there and work on these projects. And that's when I found out from these guys, because they were the leaders in a number of disciplines, that basically the Catholic Church owns science. Half these guys worked at NASA, and none of them called themselves experts. They hated that term, because they said that they were itinerant scholars working for God's love, trying to find the mysteries. Yeah, like I said, I love Richie because he's so frigging passionate. Now, Richie is a great example of somebody who believes in what he's talking about, though he has enough self-awareness to know that he may be kidding himself. He mentions that every now and then, but he's on the road. He's seeing it. I mean, I'm out in the middle of the woods. The only thing I get close to is watching, the YouTube. And another guy who's like that is Mr. Hyde, of conscious thinking, and he's a computer modeler, right? And he's been working for the Defense Department since the 70s. He modeled nuclear war, he modeled chemical war, he modeled biological war. So he knew. So he's the guy who's saying, hey, this is a, bioengineered thing, right? I don't know anything, And I constantly tell you, don't believe a word I'm saying, right? I'm just telling you stuff as a griot, a story to kind of get your little brain matter percolating and getting those little gummies in your gut. That gut reaction on all these zillion little bacteria. That is a fauna of your gut. Those are creatures. That's all your relations right inside of your gut, right? And so that's what you should be listening to, your gut reaction, not the squirrel up here, right? So just cut out the whole part after Catholics censorship. Yeah. And see, the thing is, the Catholic thing, it's just another oligarchy. It's just another plutocratic state, Microbiomes. Yep, that's who you really are. Your microbiome. That's your brain. Your brain is just your RAM. It's like the thumb drive. It's a Rolodex in the cage of your squirrel there. So, but this is a real opportunity. And, how long? I've been talking for 2 years. May 8th, this coming next a week from today will be May 1st, right? And then the Saturday, I guess, from tomorrow will be 2 weeks from this Saturday will be May 8th, I'm sure, or I think. And that will be my 200th, not 200th, my 2-year celebration of doing this show. 2 years, right? Almost 1,500 shows. Unbelievable, right? And I've been going back and looking at them, and they're all pretty good. They all, have a je ne sais what about them, right? And that's what I'm telling you guys. Put them on thumb drives. Put it on CD-ROM. Put it on, because who knows what's going to happen to the World Wide Web, and who knows? I mean, it was designed to survive nuclear war, but it's been totally sold, and everybody, Mr. Google, Mr. Facebook, Mr. Twitter, all of those guys. How can I help you? I don't want any help. Thank you very much.
There was a glitch. Try again in a few.
They're listening. See, that's AI, the whole gang. They're listening. I just have to mention, the sock puppets. That's what I'm going to call them. The sock puppets. In the oil industry, there was the 7 sisters. Oh, let's see. Twitter, Google, Facebook. Let's say, the sock puppets. We'll just put it in a plural form. And, all the people who, Mr. Bezos, Mr., whatever, who's like, all those morons. Oh, and they all started in their mother's garage or somebody's garage. Hey, Graham, how you doing, buddy? I'm just, I've been trying for 3 or 4 days to do shows, but and so I tried about, 45 minutes ago, and bingo, I was on here, and it seems to be relatively stable, and you guys are able to, that's why I call, micro penis Billy Boy. That's and I give them all funny names, right? Because I don't know if they're And they're all chumps. They all are chumps. I mean, just look at them. What kind of friggin' life? Wanting to be transhuman. You want to, no, human is what we are. Are we not men? Dr. Moreau's Island of Mystery. And that came straight out of Shakespeare's Prosperos, and that came out of the Greeks. It's nothing new. You know what I'm reading French philosophers. I got nothing else to do, and man, here's a great story. So I've told you about how the all the animals we get along really great. I got a bear on the other side of my rushing river, and I got other animals that just come and lick me and just love me. I have these feral cats. I mean, they're not kitty cats. They are nasty. They're like big. They're about 20 pounds. You don't want to mess with these cats. But I don't even feed them. But they come up on the deck, especially when it's sunny. And there's this mommy cat and her babies. And I didn't chase them off or scream at them or scare them. She wanted a place that she could have them, and she had them there. And so the sad thing was when they were little, the raccoons went after them and got about half of them, right? And the mama feral cat really took a number of those raccoons down. And so there's a somewhat easy peace between the two, and they kind of keep each other, at bay, because the raccoons were they were like gangsta. This one raccoon walked. I'm like sitting on my deck. It's a sunny day. I'm typing away on my laptop, working on a novel, and this frigging raccoon walked right across the table, stopped right in front of me, and looked at me like, "Yeah, what are you looking at?" It's like, and they went after everything they could that I didn't lock up, and how the child-proof. I don't know why they like the vitamins, but I guess they're pumping iron. They want to be buff, and so how there's the child-proof caps that and old people can't even open them up. I can barely open them up. Raccoons figured out how to open these things up. I mean, they didn't bite them up. They pushed and lined it up with the thing, and it's like, really, raccoons did that. So these are like evolved raccoons, right? They are, they're taking all these vitamins, so they're like becoming smarter. It's like the $6 million raccoon. So this year they've been relatively nice, and what's really interesting is they don't go and wreck my whole outside kitchen. They just knock a few things on the ground. And the things they knock on the ground are things I look at it and it's like, 10 years past, I eat things out of cans that are like, 3 or 4 years past. Canned food can, if it's not in the sun, it's not hot. If it hadn't frozen and then, come, if the can hasn't broken open, that's good for about 5 years, right? So, and since I prove that because, I would get canned food, and especially when I'd see it on sale, and I'd stick it in my box and forget about it. And anyway, so the raccoons have been knocking off the ones that I really shouldn't be eating. Oh, this is like 15 years old, yeah, and it's rusting on the outside. Okay, I guess I won't. So, and the thing they started to do is go into, not just go after and the other interesting thing is they only eat the rancid vitamins, the vitamins that are still sealed and, got the plastic around it, still good. Yeah, it's maybe 10 years old or 5 years old or 2 or 3 years old, but they're still good. I mean, they're herbs, so if they're not pharmaceuticals, they're herbs. So those things, and if they don't get, burnt or, soggy or moldy or any, those things pretty much are okay. Anyway, so what has happened in the last few weeks, since I've had the dreams about Mr. Wobbly, I still have dreams every other, and it is, wake up at 5 in the morning, go use the John, go, I think, that I'm still awake, but I'm not. I'm going back to bed, and I'm dreaming that I'm like typing something, writing some of the novel, and or I'm doing a live chat at 6 in the morning, or I'm doing research, or I'm doing something, right? And then I wake up, and then I go have breakfast, and then I take a shower, and then I go into the deep green, and because right now I'm going to start a garden again. But one of the things that stopped me from gardening was Corporation of the USA is flying all they can, so they think, right? So the my garden is really great little garden, and when my legs worked, I could walk up this hill, right? And it's more than just a hill. I got hills that I walk up, but this thing was very steep and very rocky. You kind of had to, but it was a perfect spot for a garden. So what did I do? Why I stopped gardening about 5 years ago is that I couldn't get up there. My legs had, you know, funked out. Couldn't do it anymore. So I have neuropathy and charcoal legs and a whole bunch of things. You know. Hmm. See, the big dog's up there, so I feel fine and safe. No one's coming in this place. Anyway, so and they are scary dogs, and they love me, as much as they love their master. I'm like you know, the guy who doesn't yell at them and gives them treats and knows where to scratch them where they like it, and listen to them. I talk to them, and they listen, they talk to me. So anyway, I dug stairs into that hill and put a drainage pipe because it was, a stream there. So I had to like jump over the stream and then climb up this steep inclination to get to the garden, which I couldn't do with my funked up legs. So I put it, I found a piece of drainage pipe, underneath something as I was clipping the bushes. I said, I can go do this. I did, and put rocks on it, and then cut one step, and then this, so it came over the drainage pipe, and then cut another step, and another step, and another step. And now it's very easy to get to the garden. So I'm gardening now, right? Going to have corn and lettuce and celery and peppers and cabbage and corn and other stuff. So because it's still good, I just had to use my weed whacker as to break up the earth and chop out the weeds and pull them up and out and throw them in the corner so they'll turn into compost and so it's still I'm gonna have a nice garden, and so that's what I do in the deep green. I kind of fix things. My plumbing, the raccoons destroyed that last summer, so I had to redo that. And there are a couple of my tarps were all ripped up from the winter, and I had to put them back together. But they weren't totally destroyed. They were just kind of edges were, the grommets were ripped out, and I just had to sew new things. I have nothing, but I got a lot of stuff, stuff to fix things, right? And nothing from Amazon, but stuff that I got at yard sales and stuff like that. Like this kind of catchy little thing. Um, I got this for 50 cents. Half the clothes I got out of free boxes, from churches over the years. And another thing I was at Ramon in England, and it's where the U.S. Air Force had a base, and they had their strategic, what you call storage of strategic stuff. And they had a visit from, people they couldn't people couldn't control. And you've seen that um, thing on the UFO channel, and it was kind of near the the ring of rocks, and and there's lots of this airbase is just littered with ley lines, and a friend of Archie's, who I was a friend of, and he was asked to, go and investigate this. Wanted to know what it was. Paranormal, extraterrestrial, dimensional, blah blah blah. And he's kind of specialist in all the above. And he said, "You wanna, go along? This might be interesting. You might like this." And I said, "Yeah, yeah, boy, yeah, sure." So when we got there, it's a English base. It's gigantic, and they, like I said, the U.S. Air Force and NATO have things there, right? That they don't tell people about, right? But they got things there, and that's where this stuff was happening. And this stuff wasn't just normal stuff that they don't tell, but other stuff. And that was the stuff that these, you know, unknowns were, and they didn't do anything nasty. They just showed those guys that, hey, we can turn it off, we can turn it on, we can push the button, we can. So we weren't really looking at that. We were looking at the unknowns and saying, what that is. Anyway, so when I was there, we were there for about 3 weeks, and we were staying at in the English Air Base part, not the U.S. part, because those are the people who hired him. Actually, hired somebody else who hired him, and he hired me. Right. So we got there, and they gave us our little badges. The other thing that was quite fun was they gave us RAF security outfits, which not everyone gets. If you're wearing one of these things, I mean, you can't miss them. They're super bright. That's why this yellow reminded me. It's bright yellow with orange. The English really mac out their security vehicles, and you look at a English police car. It's wild, crazy colors. So anyway, I have this outfit that's an RAF security outfit, right? And every time I wear it, and because it's great, I mean, it's really great. It's like, this is also great. Very thin, but has this webbing stuff that keeps you warm, even when it gets cold. And it wicks your sweat away so you don't get a chill. So, and this security outfit, so it's great. You're going out in the woods, and no one's going to, either they're going to definitely shoot you or not shoot you, because you can't miss when you're wearing this thing. And everything is so cool. I mean, the hood and there's little pieces of fleece just where you'd want to stay warm. I mean, it's really, really nice. So today it was raining and cold, and I packed up the normal things I would wear out in that, and I couldn't quite find it. And that's what's happening, is that in the deep green, I'm not finding what I'm looking for, but I'm finding stuff that I thought I'd lost forever. Like that book of photos of the Aborigines, right? And I found that out in the middle of the woods, in a box, in a garbage bag in the box. That box was sitting on a pallet, and there were other boxes on top of it, and other garbage bags with clothes in them, and it was all kind of wrapped up in tarps. And I put that there. Oh, let's see, when I had to move the stuff out of the school about 5 years ago. So it's been there fine. And so, 5 years of leaves have covered it. So you couldn't even see it. They were just lumps. And a couple of trees had fallen on top of it. So anyway, I've been going looking for stuff, and look at that lump, and I'll rip it apart. And that's when, and I found, clothes that were totally rotten, but a box of really kind of special books and things I wrote and photos, Drier Than a Bone. And that's that photo book of Aborigines I showed you. And if you guys want to see it, just go back about 5-6 shows. Just go on to things and you'll see pictures of the Aborigines. And then you, let's hit that. And I show you the whole book and tell you the whole story, right? So, let's see, what are we all saying here? Graham, can you do a show on living outdoors? Sure. Yep. I mean, see, the other thing about me, it's not that I'm lazy, but it's so convenient just to do this show at my neighbor's, using his Wi-Fi and just hitting go live. To do a show out in the outdoors, I have to put it on my phone, and then, to try and put my phone on, 7 minutes of my phone. The videos of Mr. Dr. Kazoo, right? I'm the Kazoo. I'm talking to you. I did those on my phone because it has special effects. Well, those shows are about 4 minutes long. You know how long it takes to render 4 minutes up into the YouTube channel from here that's, in a non-disclosed wacko place that just barely has internet, from space aliens. It took 9 hours for it to render. 4 to 7 minutes. Anything more than 7 minutes, it may or may not work, and it would take 15 hours. So yeah, I can, I can try, I can take, the other thing I can do is do stuff on my camera and then, like I do with the other guys, show it to the camera in my laptop. Need to get forced from Tom S'mores. I say, how can you do a smokeless fire? Well, I mean, fires, actually, smoke is good. Keeps the insects. See, I really have no insects, except I have no-see-ums at 6:30 in the morning to 7:30 in the morning, and at night from about 7:30 till about 8:30. So, and if I start a fire and it smokes up, it gets rid of the no-see-ums. So, no, I'm a big fan of smoke, and I like the way a fire smells. And I have 2 fireplaces. I have a cooking fire pit and I have a sacred fire pit, right? And the sacred fire pit is for sweats, right? And I used to do sweats here. This place, so I've had this place almost 13 years now. And maybe even longer. Yeah, maybe longer. But anyway, there were a number of years, just like I did at the school, I had a mystery school. People would come and and I didn't, like at the school, I didn't let them stay inside the school. I, had these, basically the school, the hill at the school is a Cherokee sacred site. I mean, really, it has a kitchen, it has everything, right? I'm an anthropologist. I know what to look for. And my dog, Bella, she's the one who found it. She kind of said, look at that. And the trail that I reestablished was the one they did. It was one of their walking trails. And John, it's very interesting, when John did a video when his Russian bride showed up and she had the camera and John was like February and John was like wearing his cute little shorts and nothing else. And he had like 200-pound barbells and he ran up the freaking trail and round, and she's smoking a cigarette and she can barely breathe, and John's getting further and further away from her, and he basically, he was going on the trail that I had cut, that I noticed that this was a Cherokee sacred trail. Went in a circle about a quarter mile, right? And at the top, that's where they had the kitchen, because right over here were all these gigantic stones that were the size of school buses that were stacked on top of each other, and there was a cave, and the hole was about this big. And when I was thin, I could get into it, and then it broadens out, and it's straight out of George Lucas's, Revenge of the Empire. When Luke goes to find Yoda, and Yoda's training him and sends him in that cave, and Darth Vader shows up, and Luke blows his brains out, and when he looks at the smashed up helmet, he sees his own face, right? I mean, that's a straight up, shamanic tale, and again, George Lucas got it from Joseph Campbell, and it would have been nice if George Lucas had at least thanked him in the movie, right? But he didn't give him any money, so that same cave is right there at that school, and so that hill will basically guarantee whatever you want. But if you don't know what you want, so a lot of people who lived up there, they said, "Oh, I want to have a good time. I want to get high. I want to get drunk." So they become alcoholics and drug addicts. And Inga had a hard time. She'd rent these little cabins out to people, and then they would, de-evolve. And whereas she and George, the last 50 years of their life after living a hell on earth was a great blessing, and that's what they were looking for, that place to be, blessed, right? And when she died, that's when the hill started to lose its true magic. Comments, Bud, teach us tips on survival. The number one tip on survival is integrity and intent. So if your intent has integrity, you'll survive, right? If you tell the truth, if you are, looking for freedom, living a free life, you'll survive, I mean, I'm no prepper or, any of the above. Now, I've been around a ton of those people. I've lived in a lot of communities where we've survived, in big cities, out in the middle of nowhere, indigenous people, you name it. So I've learned a lot from them, but I'm not a prepper. I'm not a guy but I do know, and from each of these different communities I've lived in, I have a buddy named Wavy Gravy, and he came from an extremely rich family. And I met him at the Fillmore East. And he came from New England, but he went out to California early on with the Dharma Bumps. I mean, I met him through, my poet roommate. His name will pop in my mind. But he also was friends of a guy named Chipmunk, who was the voice of the Fillmore East and the Fillmore West. He was a California boy. And so, Wavy had a ton of money. I mean, he never had to worry about money. And he was the guy who bankrolled in San Francisco in the 60s, the Earth People's Park, right? And it was this place in Haight. Haight was a dump. And it was like the Lower East Side, it was a ghetto. And it was a corner of the Haight where people just threw their garbage because the city didn't pick it up. And he went and cleaned it, got equipment, front end loaders and dumpsters, and picked all that stuff up, cleared it out, went and got trees, and not just planted grass, he put sod down. So like within 3 weeks, he turned it from a cesspool, and it was physically a cesspool because the sewers kind of clogged up there. It was kind of a down lower place, and the storm drains and the sewage came together there. And if it rained and garbage went in there, the sewage would be all over the place. So he went to the city and said, "Hey, why don't you fix it all over the place?" So he went to the city and said, "Hey, why don't